mind research, we need to understand the relationship between the artificial mind and our own. Although we use artificial intelligence, we tend to decline the term artificial mind in relation to the human mind. We understand from the perspective of AI the term performance, but we are still far from understanding how an artificial mind can be programmed as closely as the human mind. We have partially fulfilled our understanding of different processes of the human mind, but we have not yet been able to replicate an artificial mind entirely. One could argue that AlphaGo or Sophia lack empathy and feelings, emotional experiences, attachments, and the ability to discern good or bad, likes or dislikes, love and hate, and so on. This is one aspect. However, if we take the mind as merely the neural pathway or the shell of what we manifest and contain in a whole, we can say that we definitely struggle to place intuition and explain what knowledge itself is. It is interesting that this was also Wittgenstein's obsession in creating a project that would explain human knowledge to an alien from the perspective of someone who is not human and supposedly wouldn't possess human cognition. This remark is built on a supposition because we cannot say what type of imagination or intelligence an alien being could have, since we have not encountered any yet. However, we could find answers in how we acquire knowledge. We can study the child's mind, which is the best example and most reliable source of study in our case. When considering the potential knowledge that aliens may possess, we cannot make assumptions, as we have no evidence of their existence, let alone their cognitive abilities. However, we can consider how our own knowledge develops as a starting point for exploring what knowledge an alien species might have. An illustration of the way in which our knowledge progresses is evidenced in the theory of mind, 2M, which pertains to the capacity to recognize that others possess their own beliefs, emotions, thoughts, and intentions that may differ from our own. The development of 2M is a crucial milestone in the study of childhood mind processes, as it equips us with a better understanding of the human mind at a child's level. With the ability to navigate social interactions and comprehend the perspectives of others, this theory realizes a step forward in order to elucidate more mysteries surrounding the human mind. According to research, children attain a fully operational 2M between the ages of 5 and 8 years. At this phase of development, their language abilities are more sophisticated, enabling effective communication and comprehension of abstract concepts. Hence, this is when they begin to grasp the world around them in a qualitative mode, which implies that they can comprehend the attributes of objects, as well as the relationships between them. When contemplating the comprehensive advancement of our cognitive abilities, it becomes patently clear that it is a gradual and iterative process of amassing data and occurrences over an extended duration, culminating in the ultimate attainment of a more profound understanding of our environment. Going back to Wittgenstein's case, in which he desired to create certain knowledge that can be shared with an extraterrestrial being, we realize that the knowledge possessed by extraterrestrial beings may differ significantly from our own, and their cognitive abilities may also vary. While our understanding of knowledge development may serve as a foundation, it is crucial to remain open to the possibility that aliens may possess vastly different knowledge and cognitive abilities. According to Wittgenstein's assumptions, knowledge cannot be exclusively comprehended through logic and mathematics. It is not based on a formula or set of clues. Rather, knowledge is an outcome of the mind and its various processes, which, when finite, culminate in what we identify as knowledge. As previously mentioned, during the perception stage, our mind gathers information from the environment and sensorial input. This information is then transformed into mind objects, which can be used to form mental representations and linguistic expressions. The intuition is responsible for forming these mind objects and for recognizing the relationships between them. This recognition allows for the formation of commands, such as actions or decisions, which are based on the interaction between different mind objects. The intuition is the primary process responsible for synthesizing these mind objects into a cohesive whole. So saying, there is a 5-year-old child named Paul who knows that he feels good about being outside, and for him this proposition is always true, which we can represent with 111, a true proposition. Now Paul sees that Peter doesn't feel good being outside because he feels unwell. Peter's stance is false compared to Paul's stance, which is 000, a false proposition. However, if Paul admits that Peter doesn't feel as good as he does, he always admits that Peter feels good being outside today, represented by 111. Even if Peter doesn't feel good being outside today, Paul still admits that only he feels good being outside, represented by 111. When Peter might or might not feel the same, it becomes 101101. If Paul admits he feels good being outside, 111, Peter doesn't feel good being outside, represented by 000. If Paul admits that Peter doesn't feel good outside, which is true, that is represented by 111. However, if Peter feels good outside when he doesn't, that is also represented by a true proposition. We tried to replicate the binomial formula of intuition presented earlier to illustrate the thought process that takes place in a child's mind. We have a definite object in the child's mind as he knows how he feels and can distinguish other people's different emotions from his own. The subsequent inquiry that emerges pertains to the inception of the intuition mechanism. It can be posited that the mechanism of theory of mind, 2M, constitutes a nascent phase of intuition in Homo sapiens. This sagacious observation augments our comprehension of the generation of knowledge-producing mechanisms. As sentient beings, we are endowed with the capacity to acquire information from our surroundings via our sensory organs. Moreover, that information is deposited and processed within the reticular structures of our brain. We understand information in the same way we modify that information. This information is then processed and transformed into mind objects by intuition. These mind objects can be thought of as mental representations of objects or ideas, which can be used to form more complex concepts. At the synapses level, different pathways are formed, leading to the formation of new knowledge. When an object is perceived, our intuition engages in the processing of sensory input, leading to the formation of a mental representation of said object. This mental representation is clear when the process is concluded. This representation can subsequently be utilized to develop more intricate concepts, for instance, comprehension of the object's purpose or identification of its connections to other objects or concepts. A noteworthy psychological theory is the theory of mind, often abbreviated as TOM, which highlights the importance of the aforementioned mechanism in intuition. It facilitates our understanding of the sentiments, thoughts, and intentions of others. According to the theory of mind, this mechanism allows us to infer what others are thinking and feeling based on their behavior and communication. This mechanism is essential for the study of social development and social intelligence in children. The ability to interact effectively with others, based on the findings of the theory, shows that empathy and the acknowledgement of social codes are important milestones in child development. The formation of knowledge is a complex process that involves the synthesis of various mind objects into a cohesive whole, not only cognitive but emotional too. This process is facilitated by intuition, which recognizes the relationships between different mind objects and allows us to form more complex concepts and synapses, level pathways that lead to the formation of knowledge. So the generation of knowledge is a multifaceted phenomenon that encompasses the assimilation of sensory input through intuitive means, the creation of cognitive constructs, and the integration of these constructs into a unified whole. The cognitive process of theory of mind, or TOEM, plays a crucial role in formation of intuition at young ages, facilitating our comprehension of the emotions and cognitions of others and thus enabling us to cultivate our social intelligence and engage in fruitful interpersonal relationships. We could assume that theory of mind is the earliest stage when intuitive processes begin to crystallize in the human mind. Intuition, as a mental process, occurs when a new synapse forms and establishes a certain course of action for other synapses that are in rapport with it. To break this down into simpler terms, we can say that TOM is the earliest stage when intuitive processes start to form in the human mind, and intuition occurs when a new synapse is formed, which then influences other synapses. The theory of mind describes a fundamental capacity for human social interaction and communication, which is very important to be observed since childhood. This ability entails the ascription of mental states to oneself and others, and facilitates our understanding from an early developmental stage that others possess beliefs, desires, intentions, and emotions that diverge from our own. Typically, theory of mind commences its development in early childhood, approximately between the ages of 3 and 4. Conversely, intuition is presently acknowledged as a cognitive process that enables us to make prompt decisions or assessments without deliberate reasoning, often referred to as a gut feeling or a hunch. Intuition can be influenced by our experiences and emotions, but not subconscious processes. In actuality, intuition is frequently misconstrued as quick judgment because it is, in fact, the primary source of idea formation that originates at the synapse level. The proposition we have put forth is that theory of mind constitutes the earliest stage when intuitive processes begin to form in the human mind. The notion presented in this discourse is compelling, as it posits that the capacity to comprehend the psychological states of others may serve as a fundamental ability that contributes to the cultivation of intuition. Additionally, the idea of synapses game is noteworthy because the synapses are the interconnections between neurons within the brain that enable communication between them, wherein the establishment of a novel synapse can exert an impact on other synapses. Consequently, it leads to the establishment of fresh neural pathways by reinforcement of pre-existing ones. This is referred to as synaptic plasticity and is indispensable for the acquisition of knowledge and retention in memory. If we combine these ideas, we might propose that the development of theory of mind creates new synapses in the brain that contribute to the formation of intuitive processes. As children learn to understand the mental states of others, they also develop the ability to make quick judgments based on their experiences and subconscious processes, and later on began to develop intuition more preponderantly. Over time, these synapses become more specialized and intuition becomes a more refined and reliable mental process. In the final analysis, the notion we have put forward is a captivating one that implies a correlation between the advancement of theory of mind and the establishment of intuition in the human psyche. Despite the requirement for further research to comprehensively investigate this concept, it presents a captivating outlook on the interdependence of social cognition and formative decision-making mechanisms, where it indicates the initial formational stages of intuition in children. A mental object is the result of the intuitive process that gathers external signals and integrates them with our existing pieces of information. Through intuition, we can create new mental objects by synthesizing and integrating different sources of information. These mental objects, after their formation, can then be used to guide our thoughts, actions, and decision-making processes. At a subliminal stage, we may experience having a certain idea or mental representation about something that we are unable to express in words or fully understand. However, at a certain point, the process became more conclusive towards the final step. Then, we may suddenly gain a complete understanding and clear mental representation of this idea or concept without being able to explain how we arrived at this conclusion or understanding. It's manifesting as mind construct at the subliminal level, when our minds are constantly processing information, and sometimes we may have a vague idea or mental representation of something without fully realizing it. It is only when we are exposed to new information or have a sudden realization that this vague idea becomes a concrete understanding. This phenomenon can occur in various contexts, such as when we are trying to solve a complex problem and we're experiencing a mind blockage, or when we are learning something new. In every one of these circumstances, the intuition creates new trails and forms new types of synapses in order to process and define the new set of knowledge and extract the new skills as well. For example, when working on a difficult puzzle, we may be stuck on a particular section for a long time without making any progress. Our mind is blank as we don't have any sort of reaction nor activity. And interesting that sometimes even time notion might be affected. This phenomenon is called absorption. It is when our attention is totally focused on one point. However, the awareness is as well affected by having little or no response to outside stimulus, that is, outside this activity. Then suddenly we may have a breakthrough and gain a clear understanding of how to solve that section, even though we can't quite explain how we arrived at that solution. Similarly, when we are learning a new subject, we may feel like we don't fully understand a particular concept. Sometimes we cannot figure it out at all. In pejorative terms, it's like saying we don't click, even though we have read and studied it extensively. However, after some time, we may suddenly have a eureka moment and fully comprehend the concept without being able to pinpoint how we reached that understanding. While it may be difficult to explain how we arrived at these sudden realizations, they are evidence of the incredible processing power of the human mind, where complex sets of information are processed instantly. And for us to be able to document these steps would take us thousands of years. If we were to write down all sets of algorithms that occur from this process and try to break down the entire sets of synapses involved, this would result in a humongous quantity of information. Mapping the brain is in its incipient phase, though. We have managed to reach just a surface mode of how our mind is functioning. Our subconscious mind is constantly working. However, towards the subliminal stage, we began to be aware of how somehow behind the scenes, we are able to process information and make connections that we may not even be aware of. When we have a sudden realization, it reflects the hard work our mind has been doing and is a reminder of the complex and fascinating nature of the human brain. At a synapses level, what is happening is slightly different and difficult to explain. Let's define a mental impact as the impulse that our mind receives when we are given a command or encounter new information. This mental impact can create a new course of action that differs from our previous thoughts or actions. When we encounter something new or unfamiliar, such as a strange sight or an odd sound, our mind undergoes a higher level of synapse and cognitive activity than usual. This is due to the impact that the situation exerts upon our mind, as well as the additional effort in processing that occurrence as a piece of information that can be mentally represented or explained. We might think, this doesn't seem right, or I can't figure it out. This mental impact triggers a command which may seem instantaneous to us, but actually involves a process of integrating new information into our existing synaptic configuration. This process can be compared to adding a new piece of code to a computer program. However, our mind is far more volatile and subtle. When a new piece of code is introduced, it doesn't match the initial synaptic configuration, and the mind must reconfigure its synaptic level pathways to integrate the new information. The result is the creation of a new mind object that helps us make sense of the unfamiliar experience. In a sense, we could find as analogy, as this is similar to dropping a stone into water and watching as the water circles around the stone before settling down. Similarly, our intuition seems that is constantly at work, helping us to process new information and integrate it into our existing understanding of the world. The concept of mental impact refers to the way our mind responds to new information or stimuli that are unexpected or unfamiliar. When we encounter something that doesn't fit into our existing mental models, such as something that triggers an increased cerebral activity than usual followed by a mind blockage, then we experience a mental impact that can trigger a cascade of cognitive processes. Moreover, the best way to think about what mental impact is to consider it as a type of feedback mechanism that helps us to adjust our mental models to better match the model of environment we are into. When our mental models don't match the reality we are experiencing, this experience transforms in a mental impact that signals the need for change. This change can take the form of a new thought or behavior that better matches the situation at hand. The process of adjusting our mental models comes in response to mental impact and can be seen as a form of implicit learning. We learn from our experiences and use this knowledge in order to update our mental models, so these models become more accurate and effective due to strengthening on existing models. This is why mental impact is often associated with higher synapses level and cognitive activity. It requires significant mental resources to integrate new information into our existing mental models. One important aspect of mental impact is that the way in which we acquire new knowledge is by means of this phenomenon. Something that produces a heavier charge of stimulus has a larger and significant impact over our mind. It does stimulate more regions of the brain, producing an increased amount of cerebral activity. In this process, it can lead furthermore to creative problem solving and innovative thinking. When we experience a mental impact, our mind experiences a different trail of mental activity based on a different level of intensity. So we may say that we are forced somehow to think outside our usual mental frameworks, and this is how mentally we come up with new ideas and solutions. This type of thinking is often referred to as divergent thinking and is an important skill for creativity and innovation. Overall, the concept of mental impact is important for understanding how our cognitive processes work, and in which way the information resulted from initial impact of perception is further generated and elaborated. This could be summarized as how we learn from our experiences. By paying attention to the phenomena and causes that determine the mental impacts we experience, we can improve our ability to adapt to new situations, think creatively, and grow as individuals. When we receive a mental impact, such as seeing something peculiar that we can't immediately define or explain, our mind begins a process of intuition to form a mental object. This process involves a command being generated using all the available bits of information that are stored in our mind, along with the new bits of code acquired after the mental impact. The synapses in our brain transport these bits of information, selecting and combining them until a coherent mental object is formed. This mental object can then be used to guide our thoughts and actions. If the mental object is not sufficient or leads to a dead end, a new synapse may be created, leading to the establishment of a different course of action or a new type of synapse, which practically recreates the same process with a minimal variation. This process of generating mental objects through the interplay of synapses is complex and still not fully understood because we're at an incipient stage of a new experimental science that embraces mind philosophy with scientific discovery. The process of forming mental objects through the interplay of synapses is a fascinating and complex aspect of how our brains work. And here are a few additional ideas to further develop this concept. Synapses formed by neurons, along with their structure, play a vital role in brain function as they not only facilitate the transfer and selection of information, but also exhibit the ability to undergo modifications and adaptations over time. This is referred to as synaptic plasticity, which is essential for enabling our brains to learn, retain, and adjust to novel situations. However, this phenomenon raises more questions because apparently synaptic plasticity includes the brain's own capacity in transferring functions too, in case of brain damage or other conditions that might affect the normal functions of the brain. Through the potentiation or depression of specific synapses based on their activation frequency and timing, our brains are capable of forging new connections and adapting to environmental changes. The formation of negative mental objects is a possible result of encountering reminders of negative experiences, even in situations that are objectively neutral or positive. The concept of mental objects extends beyond this and can encompass other cognitive processes like language and perception. Within language, mental objects refer to words, phrases, or concepts that are represented and accessed in the brain via synapses. In every synaptic trail, it establishes the power of meaning for every mind object. Similarly, mental objects can also refer to the interpretation and comprehension of sensory input based on prior knowledge and expectations in perception. Although mental objects are formed through the interplay of synapses, the process is not infallible. The human brain is prone to errors, biases, and misinformation, resulting in the creation of imprecise cognitive constructs. It is imperative to recognize these limitations and engage in conscientious scrutiny and assessment of the mental constructs we develop. Universally, the process of constructing cognitive constructs through synaptic interactions is a complex and dynamic facet of brain functionality, with ramifications for various domains of cognition and behavior. Imagine our synapses are like trains that transport all the bits of information we receive, and a command will deliver those pieces of information precisely to the station of destination where the command has been initiated. The train will drop off the information at that station and then pick up another load of information from the station next to it. For instance, a train transporting information from Station A will deliver it to the station of Command A, drop it off, and then proceed to the next station, Station B, where a new command has been initiated. The train will drop off the previous cargo at Station B and reload it with the new cargo present there, and so on. Although not necessarily the most precise depiction of cerebral operations, the aforementioned concept effectively exemplifies the phenomenon of synapses transporting and conveying fragments of data to distinct areas of the brain. Despite its intricate nature and instantaneous occurrence, this analogy offers a valuable approach to conceptualizing how the brain undergoes information processing and dissemination. Moreover, let's further develop the idea of synapses as trains transporting information. Here are a few potential directions we could take. Just as trains require tracks to transport cargo, synapses require a network of specialized cells called neurons to transfer information between different regions of the brain. Neurons are cells of great specialization with unique adaptations that allow them to transmit both electrical and chemical signals across the synapses. This is a crucial communication process between neurons that plays a pivotal role in a wide range of functions, from basic sensory processing to complex decision-making, in which another key aspect of the brain's ability to process and learn new information is synaptic plasticity, which refers to the synapse's capacity to adapt and change over time, meaning that at the synaptic level, the brain itself has the capacity of adapting itself in accordance with the content of our knowledges, modification of convictions, changing or adding new ideas, etc. This process is often likened to the strengthening or weakening of connections between train cars in order to enhance their efficiency. By reinforcing the connections between specific synapses based on the frequency and timing of their activation, our brains can establish new connections and adjust to changes in the surroundings. The concept of cargo being transported by synapses can be extended to other types of information beyond sensory information. For example, synapses could also transport emotions, memories, and even personality traits. This concept underscores the interrelatedness of various facets of our cognitive existence and the intricate interplay among different brain regions. The metaphor of synapses as transportation vehicles for information may also be applicable to the manner in which memory is both stored and retrieved. Just as a train may be loaded and unloaded at distinct stations along its route, recollections can be preserved and accessed through a system of interconnected synapses within the brain. Through the retrieval of memories via these synaptic connections, we are capable of building upon our prior experiences and adapting to novel circumstances. In general, the concept of synapses functioning as trains for the transmission of information represents a valuable metaphor for contemplating the intricate and interconnected character of cerebral operations. By scrutinizing this analogy, we can acquire a more profound understanding of the workings of our brains and the way in which they facilitate our analysis and comprehension of our external environment, as well as our own cognitive processes.